Hi everyone, good morning in the US and good afternoon in Europe. Welcome to the first Epic Chat of 2022, where I have the privilege to welcome Scott Birnbaum. My name is Jonathan and I am the head of development for Epic Foundation in France. At Epic, as you know, we are a global foundation which seeks to empower and protect children, youth, and the planet they live on through our portfolio of high impact organizations all around the world. Before diving into our conversation with Scott, and as usual, a bit of housekeeping first. Today's chat will include the opportunity to ask our guest your burning question during the AMA session that will be dedicated in the second half of our chat. As you think of them, please add them to the questions tab on the right-hand side of your screen, or click to upvote the ones that you want answered. Now, it's over to you, Jason.
Thank you, Jonathan. And thank you all for being with us today from all over the world. My name is Jason, and I am in charge of the Epic Pledge community here in France. So we are really excited to welcome Scott on today's Epic Chat. Scott is the founding partner of Red Sea Venture, and he has built a successful seed and pre-seed portfolio of companies in B2B and consumer, which include Sweetgreen, Allbirds, and Nest. So you have been invited here today because you are in some way related to Epic, and for most of you are already an Epic Pledger. But for those who don't know, what is the Epic Pledge? Well, it's a promise to give a small percentage of your success as an investor, an entrepreneur, or a corporation, and to give it to social good, whether it be through sharing a bit of your exit, cash out, carried interest, or even management fees. So feel free to have a look at the pop-up coming up to know more about the pledge. So this Epic Pledge is not legally binding, so it's essentially a promise to yourself that if you succeed, you will give a little back to others who are more vulnerable. So as you see, it is pretty simple, but has a huge impact on children and youth. Now, as many of you know at Epic, we're all about giving back. Scott has chosen to dedicate this Epic Chat to the whole Epic portfolio, which focuses on helping vulnerable children and youth around the world. As always, 100% of the money we receive will go to the charities, so we would love for you to join us in tackling this issue. You will see a pop-up on your screen that will open a separate donation page. Every donation counts, so if you'd like to contribute, thank you so much. I hope you will enjoy our Epic Chat today, and back to you, Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Jason. And welcome, Scott, for the first Epic Chat of 2022. Thank you for accepting our invitation to share your knowledge, your journey, and your personal commitment with our community. Scott, you are not only an investor, but you're an investor with a background of entrepreneurship. You founded and developed a successful startup before transitioning to investing with your own VC firm, Red Sea Ventures. Can you first maybe give us more clues about your professional journey and the shift between these two not so separate worlds of entrepreneurship and investment?
Well, first of all, Jonathan and everyone over at Epic, thank you very much for hosting me today and asking me to participate. It's particularly gratifying because I've known Alexandre for a very long time now. I think just probably as he was really getting Epic started. And so it's wonderful to see how well you guys have grown over the years and the great work that you've been doing. To answer your question, I started my career as an entrepreneur. I started a software company in '99 while I was still a senior in college during my last year of my studies, and I'd always been really passionate about technology and about the opportunities for technology to impact people's lives for the better. Whether that was, early in the early 90s as just a communication protocol, getting excited about the opportunities of AOL Instant Messenger as a way to connect with people, across the world. And that concept of connection has been sort of a really important underpinning of my personal values and what's been driving a lot of what I've done throughout my life and my career. And perhaps part of that is motivated by this, Franco-American background that I have, having grown up in France, but being American, sort of like feeling like there was always a little bit of a bridge role that I was playing between two cultures. But I think that's carried forward into a lot of things that I've done in my career. I think one of the things about the first business that I built, which was a platform for information sharing and collaboration, sort of like a SharePoint extranet solution, was really, again, sort of tapping on this similar idea, an idea of building connectivity between organizations that weren't necessarily speaking to each other, enabling people to collaborate a little bit more effectively, and the positive impact that can have. Outside of my professional career, I've also been very involved with a number of charities. The one that I've been most involved with is the one called Seeds of Peace. And that is an organization that seeks to empower the development of youth leaders for positive change in conflict regions, and bringing together these youth leaders across different groups that otherwise don't get an opportunity to connect with each other and to collaborate and share. And so I think that's been sort of like one of the big underpinnings of themes or thematics of my life. And I think related to that, it sort of became a natural thing for me after exiting my software company to start to think of what I was going to do next. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I think that's always been, there. I think there are some people for whom you can't live if you're not building something on your own. And that's not a good or a bad. It's just, I think, a nature thing. And for me, it just I've always had this yearning to be in the entrepreneurial driving seat. And so after exiting my software company, I sort of meandered for a while doing a handful of different things, and started angel investing. And in the process of angel investing, it first of all allowed me to stay connected to this entrepreneurial world and see what different brilliant people that I was meeting were building. I was inspired by the work that they were doing. And it also gave me an opportunity to service them and to support them in a little bit more of a coaching position rather than in the doer position. And so what I realized at the time was that there was this growing market of technology companies in their 2010 to 2013 period. I was actively angel investing. I was working with a lot of these companies. I was helping them sort of build out their businesses, think about recruiting, and I was bringing a perspective to them that felt different than a lot of the venture capitalists that they were speaking to, because I had been an entrepreneur. Because not only had I been an entrepreneur, but I'd been an entrepreneur as a 21-year-old. And so it's a fairly unique, it's a reasonably unique circumstance to have been in, or life experience to have had. And I think that gave me a level of empathy and a capacity for communication that was just a little coming at it from a little bit of a different angle that seemed to really resonate with founders, and they seemed to appreciate it. And that was very gratifying and fulfilling for me, obviously. And so, as I thought about starting the firm, which I did in 2013, it was really the confluence of factors. It was one, the fact that I felt like there was a new space in the market being created for seed-focused funds, because it had just become so much cheaper to build companies at that point than it had been when I started my company, that you had this sort of like influx of new founders building companies. You had especially in New York, which is where I am. Hi to everybody in New York I see in the chat. You had a fairly thin venture capital market. So there weren't a lot of venture funds in New York, and there were even less venture funds focused on seed stage or specializing in seed stage. And so the combination of those two things, plus the gratifying experience that I had of working with these founders from day one, and this sort of differentiated approach that I thought I could bring to working with them, sort of made it a no-brainer for me to start my own firm. And that's and that's what I did. And it's been a wonderful, a hard and a wonderful and an exciting and a rewarding ride all at the same time, as everything in entrepreneurship and probably in life is.
Sure. Thank you very much. Before going to the second question, I must dive into one of the audience questions, because, well, this is from someone and I know very well, who's been not only an entrepreneur, but also an investor today. And his question of Alexandre is, do you prefer being an investor or an entrepreneur?
I think at this phase in my life, I prefer being an investor. Having said that, I prefer being the type of investor that I am, which is both an investor and an entrepreneur. And I say that because when you're starting your own firm from scratch, you really are an entrepreneur. I mean, it's a lot of the challenges of building a business echo also to the challenges of building a seed stage venture fund from scratch. So I get to sort of scratch both of those itches. But at this stage in my career and in my life, I actually find it a lot more gratifying to support a whole, portfolio of founders that I get to build relationships with, help them pursue their vision and build their businesses and their dreams, and help direct and bridge the capital that I bring to the market through our investors over to those entrepreneurs.
Sure, you are kind of bridging the best of two worlds within one and only position of yours now, which is a good segue to learn more about, well, basically your portfolio. So I went through it. It's like you invested in almost 50 companies. Could you highlight a couple of them that could be linked somehow to Epic's mindset, or explain to us how did you choose them, or what drives you to choose and pick some of them?
Yeah, so it's actually almost close to 70 companies at this point, but which is remarkable. I mean, to think about the fact that we've 140 some founders that we've worked with over the last 8 years has been pretty amazing. I think what I'd say is, with respect to picking companies, I mean, obviously, first and foremost, we think of ourselves as founder first investors. So we're looking for founders that really exhibit exceptional qualities. And those qualities can vary a little bit from one business to another, or from one founder to another. But I think, the main things are that they are real leaders, even though sometimes they don't realize it at the time because they're doing it for the first time. They're people who have overcome challenges pretty consistently throughout their lives. Those challenges could be sports, competitive sports, or it could be personal life challenges. They tend to be really strong storytellers. And that, to me, is really a proxy for being somebody who can communicate their vision. And as a result of that capacity to communicate, can recruit teams, can recruit investment dollars, can speak to customers effectively, et cetera. So it's sort of a pretty fundamental pillar of building a business. And then from a business perspective, we've invested across a lot of different categories. You mentioned Sweetgreen, which is a chain of farm to table salad bars that does a ton of business in e-commerce. We've invested in Allbirds, which is a sustainable material innovation business building apparel, but starting with footwear. We invested in Nest, which is the thermostat company for smart home management and energy efficiency use. That was acquired by Google. But we've also invested in companies like Convoy, which is a marketplace for truckers, sort of like an Uber for trucking, which is a huge company today. And so we've really played across the board, as well as tools for legal research and artificial intelligence for legal research for solo practitioners. And so one of the things that gets me personally very excited is businesses that are thinking about using technology as a tool, as an agent for positive change and for empowerment of individuals. And so oftentimes the theme that sort of cuts across both is this idea of building connection or building empowerment of the individual for positive change. Now, I don't want to overstate it. We're not an impact fund. We're not measuring the double bottom line, but we believe that in this market, in this world, just outside of my personal values, we believe that in this world, with the rising, millennial and Gen Z generation that is highly, highly values oriented, these values-based orientations are going to be a meaningful asset in terms of the creation of enterprise value for the businesses as well. So there's a meaningful sort of societal motivation, but but it aligns very well with our economic motivation.
Sure, and this is very interesting because you dropped a few words like positive change, empowerment, and it's like in the prep call that we had together and throughout the things I read about you, it seems like within your DNA there is this idea of ethics, of values, of purpose, and you did it like through your entrepreneurship as a professional, but also in the end within your personal life. Should it be with Seeds of Peace, but also by being kind of a peace builder in the end. You were awarded with a Young Peacemaker Award. And of course, in these days, I cannot but have a deep thought to Ukraine, speaking about peace building. So how did all those values personally and in your professional life did align and basically, well, what drove you to this journey?
I mean, that's a really deep question that we didn't prep for, but I'll answer it as best as I can. I mean, I think, I sort of alluded to this, but first of all, I think as a grandchild of Holocaust survivors, I think that was the stories of the war and of anti-Semitism, I think, were sort of a big part of my upbringing. And when you have family that has gone through those experiences, I think it forces you to really think deeply at a very young age about what justice means, what prejudice means, and where the roots of those things can come from. And for me, it was always pretty consistently about ignorance and about a lack of understanding. And so that's, I think, part of why this kind of like concept of building connection between people has always been really important for me. And, maybe I think to some degree I'm an eternal optimist, but I believe that if you give people an opportunity to get together and have a proper conversation, that they'll sort of identify the values that unite them more than focus on the values that divide them. Sometimes they just need a little bit of help to get there.
Great. Well, that's such a good and hard work to do. So, well, congratulations for all you did for peace and making people talk together in the end. Back to your investment job, for example, a first question we have from the audience is, well, Allbirds, Sweetgreens, and all the others are in very different sectors. If you're sector agnostic, how do you find these amazing rare finds? Asked Rachel.
Thanks for the question, Rachel. So I think there's a few things. One is, as I mentioned from the beginning, we're founder first investors. So this is all about the evaluation of the people that we have in front of us and trying to figure out whether we believe that they have something truly exceptional to deliver to the world. And so we have a sort of a system internally that helps us identify and evaluate those founders for those characteristics. And believe me, we've been wrong many times. There are many times that we've passed on working with founders who have ended up being absolutely mind-bogglingly exceptional. And there have been times where we've invested and it maybe has not worked out as well as we thought. But we do have this process to try to identify these characteristics. So that's the first thing. The second thing is our firm is very thematically driven along the lines of a couple of themes. One of them is a demographic trend, which is the concept of the rising, or we've been calling it the adulting millennials. So millennials, the oldest millennial now is 42 years old. They're starting to dominate the economy at senior levels of management, household, largest spenders in the economy. And then you've got Gen Z that's coming behind that will be a very significant and highly high impact force on the future of the economy as well. And so we look at these demographic trends and we try to map those against what's happening in technology innovation. And that allows us to then create these cross sections of where we believe behavior will meet technology opportunity and where the application of that technology to that behavioral change is going to create a new opportunity. And so we map this out in advance of meeting founders. And as we meet founders that are talking to us about things that we think sort of touch on this constellation of opportunities that we've identified, then we'll start to dig in really actively with those founders to figure out if the business model is right, if the unit economics can work. We do a lot of research on these markets. So we spend a lot of time going pretty deep on the businesses that we're going to support. And so I think that's what's given us this ability, combined with the strength of our network as sort of a source of great talent, to pick winners across a lot of different categories.
Okay, very clear. Thank you very much. We have another question because you spoke about Gen Z, millennials, and values. And the question of Anna is, what's your advice to companies who would want to start their sustainability journey in the future of work or of life? We know that, for example, with investment, you have the ESG, which is booming. And so is it somehow something you look at very precisely, or what are the tips you could give for these kind of entrepreneurs?
So I will tell you, I love that question. It's something I've been thinking a lot about for the last 3 years. And so I guess, it's a very, very long and involved answer, but I think the first thing is sustainability and ESG to me is now table stakes for businesses. And so if you are not building ESG into your company from day one, you will not be attractive to the market 5 years from now. The second anecdote is that Allbirds, for example, which is a business, we've invested in a lot of companies that have ESG underpinnings to them from day one. Allbirds through their innovation around materials, Sweetgreen through their program around food and education for young kids in schools, as well as the way that they run their business and supply chain. And that's just two examples, but we have many. Nest, obviously, which we talked about. Convoy, which is all about sustainability because they're basically doubling the utilization of the trucking market and improving a carbon footprint as a result of that, or efficiency on carbon footprint as a result of that. So a lot of our companies have these underpinnings. Those are the sort of some of the big names that that we've talked about. That's why they're coming up, but there are a lot of others. So I think if you don't build that into the business day one, you have a high chance of meeting significant pushback in the market when it comes time to exit 5 to 10 years from now. The second thing I would say is it's easier and easier every year to bake in sustainability and ESG into your business. And so I think the first thing that you have to do is you just have to think about it. Like that, truthfully, that's the first thing. The second thing you have to do is start to think about the carbon footprint and assess how you can purchase offsets, which can be done really affordably. The third is think about the values of your business and build ESG values into the charter of your company. Use it as a filter for the values of the people that you bring on board, and define what that means for your company. There's a broad range of what ESG means. You don't have to go all the way to the extreme end. Pick what's right for you, but get moving in that direction. And what I will tell you is that I think you will find that it will have a de minimis impact on the economics of your business, but it can have a significantly accretive impact on the end state value of your company over time.
Yeah, that's well, very true. But I cannot but be 100% positive with what you've just said. And speaking about, well, it's just like a good segue because we've spoken about Gen Z, millennials values. You spoke about the value that you could share within your own startups and companies. And diversity and inclusion is also a question not only of hiring people, but trying to find founders who are from minorities and diversities. Apparently, according to Debbie, you have many investments that have diverse founders. Is that something that you look for specifically? And have you found this has helped with the bottom line, for example?
It's not something that we have historically looked for. It's been a result of sort of serendipity of opportunity of meeting founders with diverse backgrounds that we thought were building exceptional businesses and backing them. Now, having said that, I don't think that we have not been doing enough in terms of increasing our access to a pipeline of diverse founders. And so over the last year, we've been starting to build out relationships with different organizations that can increase the diversity of our top of funnel. So thank you for noting that we have which I agree. I think we have a very good hit rate with respect to diversity, especially with respect to gender diversity within our founder group. But I think there's a lot more to be done, and we're actively focused on it.
Okay, so it's not a specific asset you look at first, but do you think that depending on the gender or on the minority or the diversity of the founder, it can be a better asset for resilience, for I don't know.
Look, I think that the way that I think about it is a little bit different. The way that I think about it is the world is a diverse place. If you don't back diverse founders, then you're missing out on an entire world of economic opportunity. And so the excellence is not limited to one ethnic or racial group, obviously. And so it's a matter of it's just purely a matter of being open-minded and being and building network of diverse founders and being responsive to the opportunities that people bring to you based on their own lived experiences. And so that's what we try to do, and we're and I think, as I said, I think we've done a decent job of it, but we could do a lot more. And I do think that diversity within organizations is a very important thing for success. And as a result of that, obviously having a diversity of founders also is important for success. But we certainly have not done the job of trying to quantify what kind of end state value that can add to companies. Okay, so we're just focused on backing great people.
Yeah, thank you very much for the answer. Very clear. Another question by Michelle, which is more personal. Well, at least it's really up to you. But Scott, is there a moment or a specific achievement in your professional career that particularly stands out and that you'll never forget, good or bad, and why?
Is there a moment in my career that particularly stands out that I'll never forget?
Maybe some.
There are a lot of them. There are a lot of them, but I don't know why this is the one that's coming to mind right now. But I think it's because it's been a moment that's had an impact on me from the way that I think of what leadership means. When I was a lawyer, there was a senior associate that I worked for who I got a call from the head partner of the firm at 7 p.m. one night saying, "Hey, I need the following done by tomorrow morning, 8 a.m." And he described it, and I had no idea what the heck he was even talking about. And I had worked for this other senior associate who was a very nice guy, and I called him and I said, "Hey, sorry to bother you, but so and so just asked me to do this thing by tomorrow morning. I'm not sure that I understand what it means." And he said, "Okay." He explained it to me. And then, lawyers leave late. So he calls me at 10 p.m. on his way home and he says, "Hey, by the way, I'm going home. If you need anything as you're working on this is, by the way, this had nothing to do with him. It wasn't his job. He wasn't supervising me on this matter." And he calls me at 10 p.m. and he says, "I'm on my way home. I'm going to be going to sleep. I'm giving you my home phone number. Call me." He's married and had kids at the time. To call me anytime, because I was like, "Yeah, but I'm going to wake you up. I'm not going to call you and bother you." He said, "No. 5 minutes on the phone with me is going to save you 3 hours if you hit a wall and you don't understand something. So just call me if you have any questions and you'll get the answer and I'll go back to sleep." And I just thought that was like such a great example of what real leadership looks like. Real leadership, I think, is in service of the people that work for you, quote unquote, and not the other way around. And so I don't know why that's the example that came to mind, but that's one that I think of often.
But that's a very good one. And for example, is it something you try to implement in the way you manage or in the way you work with your participations, for example?
Yes, I mean, so I think coming back to the concept that I shared earlier, that I think my entrepreneurial experience as a young professional changes the way that I do venture capital. I think related to this is the way that I think of, by the way, even building our team internally at Red Sea Ventures, I think of it more as a volunteer relationship. And so whether it's for Seeds of Peace or Red Sea Ventures team, I think of this as a volunteer relationship where I have to give more value to them than I'm extracting out of them. And so, value can come in a lot of different ways, but if you think about it proactively that way, it can really have a wonderful impact on the dynamics of the relationship with your team. Similarly with founders, my approach is, you're in charge. You're flying the plane. I've decided to get in the plane, and I've decided that I'm going to put myself in your hands as the pilot. If the engine starts to go out, my job is to say, "Hey, I think the engine is burning on the left here. Is that normal? It feels like it's not normal based on my prior experiences, but you're the person flying the plane, so you let me know." If they say, "It's totally normal, I got this, I know what I'm doing," okay, like my job is to, maybe I'll tell you again, "Hey, it's really burning. Like, I really think you need to pay attention to this." But my job is not to tell a founder how to live their lives, run their business. My job is to be supportive of them, and is to pick the right market, and then to be supportive of them in that process. And so I'll never substitute the judgment of the founder with my own judgment. I'm only really there to sometimes very directly and very, very honestly tell them what I'm interpreting is happening. But at the end of the day, if I'm being heard and they have a counter view or counter argument or a reasonable opinion that differs, it's their show, and they've got a lot more to lose than I do.
Great answer. Thank you very much, Scott. 30 minutes goes by like this. It's very short, but it was really intense. And I saw in the chat that many people thank you for your insights and your very clear explanation. So thank you for sharing all of this with us today, Scott. So then this is already the end of our first 2022 Epic Chat. And I really wanted to thank you, Scott, once again, and thank the people who connected today to know more about your thoughts on entrepreneurship, your values, and all you did for peace building. Thank you, everyone. Yes, thank you, Scott. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. And of course, a special shout out to all of our pledgers that were connected in the audience today. Next Epic Chat will be in April, so stay tuned to know in the upcoming weeks the name of the next speaker. Should you have any question about us or about the Epic Pledge, please reach to us at epicpledge@epic.foundation and stay for an extra minute to learn more about how to join our fabulous Epic Pledge community and hopefully sign the pledge.